Hello everyone, my name is Thomas White and this is Thomas Writes. I'm finally back with another video. I know it has been a long time since I have posted anything, so it is good to finally be done with my semester so I can get back to posting more regular videos. Over the course of the month in which I wasn't posting anything, I picked up 10 books that I want to share with you all today. Of these books, 5 of them were paperbacks, 4 of them are ebooks, and 1 of them is an audiobook. Without further ado, let's get into this book haul. Kicking us off is a book that I just finished this week, and that is The Martian Chronicles by Ray Bradbury. Ray Bradbury is one of my favorite science fiction authors, if for no other reason than that he wrote Fahrenheit 451, which I got into back in middle school. That book was incredibly influential on me, as it was a book that touched me on a personal level and really spoke to me in terms of speculative fiction. Also, just the artwork on this particular copy really stood out to me as being very impressive and very striking. I'm a big sucker for space sci-fi, and when I learned that Ray Bradbury had written a kind of space opera sort of story, I was eager to check it out, and I gotta tell you, this book did not disappoint. This book is just an instant classic to me because it is a fascinating analyzation of human culture that is just as relevant today as it was back in the 50s when it was originally written. This book was written at the beginning of what became known as the Space Age, and it is just very interesting to see how Ray Bradbury tackles the kind of themes that would come along with the possibility of humans colonizing other worlds. I'm very eager to talk about this book in more detail in a future review, so stay tuned for that. The second paperback book that I picked up is A Scanner Darkly by Philip K. Dick. I've already read Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep by Philip K. Dick, which I still need to make a review on. I apologize for not getting that out sooner. But in short, my thoughts on that book are, it's a little clunky in its execution for me, but I thought that the themes and the ideas explored in it were very fascinating, and I was just really sucked into the world that Philip K. Dick created. A Scanner Darkly is another work of his that was also made into a movie like Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep. However, I have not seen the movie version of A Scanner Darkly yet. I imagine that I will check out the movie version once I read the book first. I'm eager to see what my thoughts on this book will be, because with Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, I saw the movie Blade Runner first before I read the book, and I think that really affected my perception of the book. So I'm interested to see what I will think of this book reading it first and then going to the movie later on. All I know about this book is that it involves drugs and is kind of a noir type feel, and I like stories that involve noir and kind of detective type stuff, so I'm interested to see what I think of this book. The third paperback book that I picked up is Red Shirts by John Scalzi, I believe is how you say his name. This book is one that I know next to nothing about, other than that it is kind of a space opera and very obviously kind of aping off of Star Trek. For those of you who don't know, the title Red Shirts is a reference to the original series of Star Trek, in which the crew members of the Enterprise who show up for an episode and wear a red shirt almost always are the ones who get killed off, captured, tortured, experimented on. They're just like cannon fodder, so the rest of the members of the Enterprise crew can survive and contribute to the real story. So just from the title alone, I'm guessing this book is going to be pretty tongue-in-cheek and probably play off of a lot of typical sci-fi tropes. This is a book that I see on almost every sci-fi shelf in every bookstore that I go to, so I'm hoping that means it's good. I've heard good things about John Scalzi, and I really like the space adventure genre in general, so I'm eager to see what I will think of Red Shirts. Next up in paperback books is a book that kind of is out of place with the other ones I've listed so far, and that is The Killing Moon by N.K. Jemisin. This book is a YA fantasy and the first book in a duology of fantasy books. Again, I know next to nothing about this particular book. This book was actually gifted to me by a friend, and they said that they chose it for me just because they thought the cover looked cool and they knew that I'm a fantasy fan. So hopefully that means this book will be good. I will say that the cover art is pretty cool. I like the title, The Killing Moon. All I really know about the author is that she is most famous for The Fifth Season, which I know that that trilogy of books has been highly acclaimed on BookTube and is a series that I do want to check out at some point. I figured this book and its subsequent sequel would be a good way to test to see if I gravitate towards her writing style, because I know some people are kind of mixed on N.K. Jemisin, so I'm curious to see what I think of her and her prose. I'm also just looking forward to what I assume will be kind of an easier fantasy read, and picking up a series that isn't 14 books long, looking at you, Wheel of Time. Having a shorter series to go to is always welcome in my book, so I am eager to see how The Killing Moon is. The last paperback book that I picked up is another popular YA series, and that is Red Rising by Pierce Brown. This book has been very highly acclaimed in YA circles. I have a couple of friends who really love this series of books. I've heard it described as being basically Hunger Games meets Game of Thrones meets Mars, which, to be honest, I'm not entirely sure what to make of that. I don't know if I will like this or not. I'm not sure if it will be too dark for me, or if it will kind of hit that right mood for me where I will enjoy it. Depending on the kind of story, I can either love the darker elements of a story, or I can really not like them and find them gratuitous and overbearing. So I imagine when I read Red Rising, it'll give me a pretty good sense if this trilogy of books will be for me or not. But stay tuned to see my thoughts on this very popular YA series. The first ebook that I picked up is The Complete Works of H.P. Lovecraft. This one was free on the Kindle store for a brief period of time, and once the Lovecraft subreddit informed me of this, I just had to pick it up. The last Lovecraft book I read was The Call of Cthulhu and Other Short Stories, and while I did only give that book 3 out of 5 stars, I really enjoy Lovecraft's style in terms of his world building, the kind of themes he plays around with, and a lot of the imagery that he shows in his prose. And frankly, that book was a pretty small kind of selection of stories that he had, and so I'm eager to check out what other stories H.P. Lovecraft wrote. I've already read The Color Out of Space in this book, which was very good. I'm debating whether or not to do a standalone review on that story or do a video that just kind of covers a bunch of the individual short stories. So let me know down in the comments what you would prefer in terms of me reviewing H.P. Lovecraft's material. This book is gigantic, by the way. I doubt I will read every single story contained within, though a couple of the ones in there that I definitely want to check out are The Mountains of Madness and The Dunwich Horror, as I have heard very good things about both of those stories as well, and those will likely get their own standalone reviews once I read those. I know that Lovecraft style is not for everyone, but I gotta say, the weirdness of his world building is very intriguing to me, and so I'm eager to get even more into his mythos. The next ebook that I picked up is The Frugal Wizard's Handbook for Surviving Medieval England by Brandon Sanderson. This is the second of the secret projects that Brandon Sanderson unveiled with his Kickstarter. I really enjoyed the first secret project that he released, which was Tress of the Emerald Sea. I gave that book 5 out of 5 stars just because it was so funny, the world building was really good, the characterization was very good, and it just had a very lighthearted, tongue-in-cheek tone that I very much resonated with. With The Frugal Wizard's Handbook, I've heard more mixed things about it. People seem to either love it or hate it, And this book is also not connected to the Cosmere, as far as I'm aware. It's its own, just standalone story, which I can get behind. Not every book that Sanderson makes has to be connected to the Cosmere. But kind of given the source material that it's dealing with, and the fact that it also seems like it's trying to be quirky and funny like Tress was, I'm very curious to see if it works for me in this book, or if it doesn't quite work for me. This is one that I hope to get to in the near future, so stay tuned for my thoughts on that. So the next book that I picked up as an ebook, because it was only $2 at the time I purchased it, was Old Man's War by John Scalzi. This is probably John Scalzi's most acclaimed series of books, and it is a book that is very heavily talked about on the Sci-Fi subreddit in terms of being pinnacle military science fiction. If you couldn't tell from the videos on my channel already, I am a big fan of military science fiction, and I'm actually trying to work towards writing my own military science fiction novel. I know next to nothing about the premise of this book going in, other than that it is humans fighting aliens and there's an old man who I presume goes to war, so I'm eager to see if this one engages me like other military sci-fi has. The last book that I picked up on Kindle, which was only $3 at the time, was The Calculating Stars by Mary Robinette Kowal. She is one of those authors that I am decently familiar with. I have read the original, which she collaborated with Brandon Sanderson on that, and I did DNF The Spare Man by her as well, just because that book didn't really resonate with me. I think the whole cozy murder mystery genre, it doesn't really work for me, and so it wasn't so much her writing style as just more the tropes of the genre in general. But from what I've seen, I think she's a good author, and I really enjoy her contributions to the Writing Excuses podcast, which I listen to every now and then. And this is probably her most famous sci-fi work. All I know about this one is that it involves an alternate history of the space race in which female astronauts are working together, Americans and Russians, to try to solve a calamity that affects the whole planet. And it is set during that space race era, so I'm very curious to see what I think of this one. Most people, from what I've seen online, either tend to be very engaged by it or think it is very boring. So I'm curious which camp I will fall into. I tend to really like space age era stuff. I love learning about the history of that era and those original astronauts and cosmonauts. So I think at the very least the historical references will stand out to me. With that being said, I am eager to check out The Calculating Stars in the coming weeks. And finally, the last book that I picked up was a pre-order that I did on Audible, and that was For Fractal Noise by Christopher Paolini. I did a review of To Sleep in a Sea of Stars last year, and overall my thoughts were, I thought the book was decent, but I was more engaged by the world building and the universe that Paolini was setting up, rather than the story itself. I know that this book is supposed to be a prequel to the first one, and it seems like Paolini is trying to expand out the Fractalverse more so that he can tell more stories within the universe. And like I said in my original review, I really liked the universe that Paolini was setting up. It was just that particular story didn't engage me quite as much as I would have liked. So I'm curious to see if this prequel, which is also set in that universe, will engage me more. I'm also eager to pick it up because Jennifer Hale is returning to voice the audiobook, and I think she's just a fantastic voice actress and a very good narrator. And so if nothing else, I'm sure I will get a very good Jennifer Hale narration out of listening to this book. This is also one of the few series that I have kept up in terms of the releases, that as soon as this book comes out later this month, I will be on top of it, listening to it, and hopefully be more involved in the discourse on this series rather than coming in late in the game. But that is all of the books that I picked up while I was away. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video, and if you have, be sure to like and subscribe. Comment down below on which book you are most excited for me to read, and stay tuned for my upcoming videos as I catch up on all of the reviews that I need to do. Thank you guys again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.